The date is November 2nd, 2021, and we see a police vehicle right here. It's kind of a camouflage police vehicle, but it has the logo on it. And it drove away the moment I arrived to this area here. So yeah, I haven't seen one like that before, but yeah, it had the police logo and it's kind of painted over. Apparently it says on it it's a mobile crisis intervention vehicle. So yeah, so they faked something here. So yeah, so that vehicle there obviously shows up in my precise location as I'm on my way to the subway station. So that's one for today. And yeah. Interesting that they sent that one though, because I mean it's a little less obvious, right? With the different color of the car. But nonetheless, still a police vehicle. And drove away at the exact moment I arrived there. So make what you will of that. And another thing that a lot of people dealing with targeted harassment or organized harassment are aware of is the fact that you will constantly have noise harassment wherever you are, right? So if you move, it just starts again. So where I used to live, it was in a building that was mostly businesses and commercial tenants, and I had a unit in the lower level, and it was a nice unit. It was a one bedroom, good size. And actually, I was very fortunate because the unit itself was covered as part of my job. I had a very good job. Well, I mean, by today's standards, it was decent, right? And I had been there for 3 years. I worked hard for that company. They promoted me. And but during the third year, that was when the stalking activity started. And obviously at that point, there was a lot of things done, slander, and things like that done to try and get me to leave. But you can't, the thing is, like, you can't just fire someone for no reason, right? You see, you have to have some way, especially if someone's a hard worker, and I worked hard for them. And yeah, I was promoted, so they obviously thought highly of my work. Yet these things started happening, and when I reported them to my employer, that there were people following me literally everywhere while I was going to do the checks at their buildings at night, they just wouldn't even acknowledge it. They just pretended that it wasn't happening. So that tells me that either A, they knew about it, and B, someone went to them and said, no, don't even acknowledge it when he brings it up, right? They were probably told not to, which creates obviously a difficult situation, right? And so now I've moved. I left that job because they just, when you're in a situation where you're being stalked on a daily basis and your employer won't even acknowledge it and the police are partaking in it, it gets to the point where you say, okay, I need a change. And even if that's going to mean making considerably less money, which I am now. So, of course, now I've moved to an area slightly north of the city. Technically it's still part of the city, but it's just north, half an hour north. And the place where I've moved to, I've been there like maybe a month and a half. And literally whenever I go outside, you have people following you. I rent one area of the basement, and the other guy who's there, like literally as soon as I go out of the room, he will come out at the exact same time. So last Friday, I got home from work around midnight. Literally the moment like I come in, he just arrives home at midnight. And then on top of that, you have continual banging on the ceiling. That's clearly intentional, right? Because the same thing was happening where I used to live, where they would, like, there previously, it literally sounded like they were picking up and dropping furniture onto the ground, like just smashing it onto the ground. And this was noise that was not just typical noise, right? Like you would expect to hear a little bit of noise in an area like that, but this was clearly intentional. And as it is here, So here they just slam stuff down on the floor over and over again, right? And obviously that's not coincidental, because even when I was living at the other place, when that started happening, what I began doing was, I mean, I was making a decent amount of money, so what I would do is, okay, I would say, it's going to be noisy up there, I'll just go get an Airbnb so I can get, some sleep on my days off. And so I started doing that, and then started realizing that, lo and behold, the exact same thing starts happening with the Airbnbs that I would rent. Again, it had people slamming on the walls, banging on the ceilings nonstop. And so that was when I really started to say, hold on, like something's rotten here, right? This is not coincidental. And started waking up to the fact that this really was something serious. And then, of course, having seen the videos on gangstalking and organized harassment, was able to put two and two together. But I really came to the realization about what it was around, I'd say around June of last year. And so that was around the time. But I suspect now, in hindsight, I suspect they had been doing it, because I just think of all these various events that happened that were very bizarre. I think they started, at least their initial stage, their psychological profiling of the target, around 2018, actually. So close to 3 years now, but with the actual real legitimate stalking aspects coming more into play over the last year and a half. Now, you can see up there at the intersection, there's an ambulance, right? Ambulance just beyond those cars there. Not surprising. Right? So far today, November 2nd, seen a police car, well, a cleverly disguised police car. Actually, I hadn't seen one like that previously, but it was painted over. It had the police logo, but it was painted over, and it had crisis intervention written on it. So, and see, now the ambulance is leaving as I'm crossing the street here, so you can see them there very clearly. Yeah, it had crisis intervention written on it. And you know what they're trying to imply with that too, right? Like, there's a big crisis because someone who they're stalking has gone outside. So we're going to have to go and intervene in this big crisis of someone who's a law-abiding citizen who's done nothing wrong being able to walk outside, right? So yeah, that's the implication with that. And that vehicle left as soon as I arrived at the area. The fraud first responder cop got in and left. And then we just saw there, and look at this now. Now we got a fire truck here. Look at this, man. Yeah. So again, so we've seen a police car, an ambulance, and a fire truck, all just within a half an hour this morning. So I mean, that's, and you see the checkerboard there, right? The Masonic checkerboard on the side of it. But yeah, see, they got their face diapers on, so you can't really see their faces, which is convenient there. Look at them looking over, like, oh, what are you filming? Yeah, you know why I'm filming. You know why I'm filming, because you're stalkers. Because you're stalkers, right? So, but look at the checkerboard symbol there, right? These masons here. And, well, maybe they're not all masons, but certainly the people who give the directions within the fire department and call the shots are masons, right? And then these other guys just do what they're told. So yeah, but that's them again there, right? So just to document that. So an ambulance, fire truck, and a police car within a half an hour this morning. I think we're beginning to see that this is coordinated, right, by now. So, and again, they set that up knowing where I was going to go. I'm going somewhere else before work. I have to make a stop off before work today. So, knowing that I would take an alternate route, they have these people all ready to go. So, interesting, yeah. But yeah, going back to what I was saying, the job that I was previously at was quite good in that, I mean, the pay was above average, at least for what I was doing. And I was provided with an apartment which was covered as part of the job, and it was a decent apartment too, like I said, good size. And near the downtown area too. And then 2 years, everything, I worked hard for them. They promoted me. Always got along very well with them. And in fairness, they spoke to me very respectfully. And even while these things were going on, we maintained a very good, respectful, and dignified, interactions. And I can't say that they didn't, right? It'd be dishonest for me to say that they weren't good to me in the way they treated me at the job, and I worked hard for them too. So it was both ways. But the thing is, when you have these things starting to happen, and you report them to your employer, and these are serious things too. Like, it was literally, I showed in some of the earlier videos that I started posting, I would go outside to do this job, and my job, sorry, it's a little loud. My job consisted of going to check on like 10 different buildings within the same vicinity for these people at nighttime, because it was in an area, where there was some homeless people, and they occasionally had some difficulties. And actually, there was a homeless shelter that was opened up just across from the area where I was working as well. And naturally, that provided for some interesting things going on. But so this was reported to them, and I put it in writing in various emails that this is happening, right? I'm having people follow me, and it was provable because I had video footage of it too. Like, you'd have someone drive up right to your location on a secluded street and then just abruptly turn and go in the opposite direction. Sorry. And anyone could see, like, over a period of time, I started to realize that this wasn't, these type of things were not coincidental. And so during that time, obviously I communicated this to my employer, and nothing was done about it. They just pretended, like, they didn't even acknowledge it, really, for the most part. There was one situation where one of the people said, well, do you want us to bring in another security guard? I'm like, what's that going to do if this is still happening, right? Because my position for that company, I'm not going to go into any details of the specifics of who the company is, because that wouldn't be fair, even though they should have backed me up on these things. So I was promoted. I was the head of security, but we had an outside, so I worked directly for the company in an in-house position, and we had contract guards who I was the supervisor of, and they were really good. We had a really good relationship. They stood behind me while these things were happening, and some of them also accompanied me many times while these stalking activities were happening, and they saw them, and they witnessed these things. And so the difficulty then became that the company would do nothing about it, right? And for me, like, this job, realistically, I should have been able to work this job until retirement, right? I would have liked to have under ideal circumstances, but and then other things started happening too, where they would have people who worked on the properties and who were tenants there following me around and, like, not just in a subtle way, like openly following me around and stalking me. And again, I have some video footage of this stuff as well. So yeah, in that situation, it was, the only option was to move on. And I knew that doing so, it was going to mean making a lot less money and moving to a different location and in a much more modest living area, which I'm at now, which you can clearly see the gang stalking continues there, because you have the exact same things that were happening previously. People following you consistently, police showing up everywhere you go, ambulances and fire trucks showing up everywhere you go. And you can tell that something was said to these people. Something was said to my previous employer, and they said they had to have said something like, just ignore it if he brings these things up, right? Which again points to a high level, someone in the high level legal system. Probably, maybe somebody, RCMP went to them, undercover RCMP, because to do these things, they opened fake investigations, right? They slander the person who they're going to do this to, and they open fake investigations. And so logically, it seems like this is what happened. They went to my employer and they said, you know, if he brings these things up, don't back him up on any of them. And, you know, just pretend that they aren't happening. But there was clear and concrete proof that they were happening. So towards the end, there was one situation there which was really bad. I was out doing a patrol of one of their buildings, and I get some guy who's behaving really weirdly. Seemed like a drug addict, along with a vicious dog, which he had on a leash. Of course, he comes across the street and lets the dog run off the leash toward me. And I had my phone on. I said, if that thing bites me, man, you're going to have problems because I'm filming this. And fortunately, the dog didn't bite me, but then he starts yapping and yelling things at me. And one of the things, he starts yelling, pedophile. So obviously, they had gone and done this disgusting slander, right? And this is what they will do to people who they're targeting. They'll slander them to the people in the area, tell horrible lies about them, you know, in order to justify having these people follow them around and, you know, quote unquote, watch them. So, yeah, I mean, that was the situation. And then after that happened, I brought this up to my employer, told them about it, and told them that I had video footage of it. And for that, they said, okay, because I had already given them my notice at that time. So they said, okay, take the rest of the time off and we'll give you pay as well. And so at that point I said, okay. But then one of the people in charge of things said to me, after I had emailed them detailing what that guy had said and detailing, you know, that it was slander, it was a lie. This person then says, well, okay, if it's okay with you, I'm going to get rid of your email. Now, think about that. Think about that, because they knew I was leaving, but I wanted that email as, you know, a written record that I had brought these things to my employer and that slander was going on and horrible lies were being told to, you know, defamation of character. And so she said, well, is it okay? I'm going to delete the email, right? I said, well, whatever. But then I made a copy of it, right? I made sure that I had a copy of it to confirm that I had conveyed this information to these people. And their response to it was to give me an extra couple weeks pay and tell me, okay, take the time off. And that was it, right? So, I mean, that tells you how insidious these types of things are and how they definitely slander people in order to justify what they're doing.